Hey guys, so we are just one day away from the event and I've been working hard on the League starter and leveling POB for the build that I'll be playing, the Power Siphon Totem Whisperers, which is what I'm going to cover in this video. So before getting into it, a huge thanks to everyone for the feedbacks. There have been a lot of questions about the build, and so I want to cover all the important things, clarify some concerns, and hopefully cover everything you guys have been wondering about. First, a quick disclaimer, this build is untested in actual League environment. There are some mechanics I couldn't fully test in-game, and I will address those later in the videos. With that being said, if something doesn't work out as expected, I'll be making adjustment, and don't worry, I'll be playing this build no matter what, so you will see firsthand of how it performs, and I will make progression updates as we go. Let's get this out of the way first, and I want to talk about why are we playing a Power Siphon Totem build. And I think Totem builds are fantastic for new players because it let you kind of moving, dodging everything while the Totem do all the works. So Totem also have really good clear speeds, especially Power Siphon Totems, when one Totem can shoot up to 8 targets, making the leveling and mapping a lot smoother, and it has a lot of innate build power with the power charge interactions, so yeah, it's going to be pretty strong early in the games. The Whisperers Ascendancy also have massive potential in the game, so even if the setups that we are planning is not working out, we have a lot of room to scale into another build that is going to be really strong. Early game damage is also great, so even with low investment or campaign gear, you can still get to level 80 and get your reward, so it's going to be a foolproof build for the early game if you just want to get done with the event. Like I mentioned before, some mechanics are untested, so we have 19 new ascendancies. They are unknown interactions that we'll need to figure out as we go. Some of them might be broken, some of them might not even function, so yeah, we'll have to see. Now let's talk about how I'm going to level this build, because POE 1 is all about efficiencies, and as they say, if you're going without a plan, you are planning to fail. So that's why I have included a detailed written guide in my League Starter POB, so you can see exactly what skill to use, how to path your tree, and what to do at each steps. The short versions of what I'm doing is I'm going to start as a Lightning Arrow Rangers until around level 30, then I'll swap to Power Siphon Totem after the first lap, or trial if you're coming from POE 2. From there on, it's smooth sailing through the campaigns. We are extremely strong after the first ascendancies, and I'm going to break down the leveling progressions, give you some tips and tricks for the campaigns. If you are a POE 1 players, feel free to skip ahead and just check the leveling POB, but if you are coming from POE 2, this session is for you. Now, first thing first, make sure you have a proper loot filters for the campaign. You shouldn't hide anything important, and it should just highlight what you need to pick up. And you can find the one that I am using in my Discord. Now, POE 1 do not have a WASD movement, so for the campaign, you always want to bind your left click to movement and hold down the left click to move. Then you always want to enable the always attack without moving, so you don't randomly move when trying to attack. During the campaign, you want to pick up pretty much everything: portal scrolls, wisdom scrolls, and all kind of currencies. Chaos orb is like the exalted orb of POE 2, which is the stable currencies. And if you find an exalted orb, make sure you save it. Do not slam it on items because they are more valuable in POE 1. For the leveling skills, we are using Galvanic Arrow for level 1 to 12, and then we'll swap to Lightning Arrow plus Ballista Totems for leveling from 12 to about 30, where you complete your first lap, and you will swap to the Power Siphon Ballista Totem setups until the end game. The last tips I have for you is you should always try to be under level in the zone, even though it might sound dangerous, but POE 1 campaign is a lot easier than POE 2. This is not a speed run, but you should try to skip most monsters in the campaign. Also, I want to quickly touch on the gears. For a smooth leveling experience, you always want to check render as often as possible every time you level up, or anytime you get back to town. You want the right socket color. I have a regex provided in the POB. All you need to do is copy that and paste into the banner itself, and then you will filter the items that you actually want, which is the item with the correct link and the correct color. Before swapping to the Power Siphon, you definitely want to try and grab a 3-link or 4-link with the correct color. So another important thing to note is that the regex that I provide is mainly for the movement speed on the boots and then the 3-link socket color. Starting from Act 3 at around level 30, you will start finding 4-link items, and you want to be manually looking out for that in the shop itself. Before swapping to Power Siphon, make sure you grab a 3 or 4-link with the correct color so the skill is functional right when you do the swaps. Flap elemental damage is also king in the campaign, and you should look for it on the bows, the wand, quivers, and you can benchcraft them on the rings and glove as well, so it is important for you to do that. One of the biggest mistakes new player make is by not upgrading their weapons. In POE 1, weapons matter way more than the armor slots because you can pick up more damage, so make sure you're constantly picking up bows, wands, quivers, and check if there are upgrades no matter where you are in the campaigns. I got some more campaign tips and tricks for you here. So like I mentioned before, you should skip most of the rare monsters. They take forever to kills and generally aren't worth your time. Since there's no dodge roll in POE 1, we are going to use dash and later on frostblink so to move and dodge skills. Anyway, movement skills is essentials and will speed up the campaign, so make sure you use them. The league mechanics of this event is going to come out of the 3.25, which is going to have King's March. Generally, early on it's not really worth the time, but starting from Act 6 or 7, you could start interacting with the ore and start setting up your town. The most important thing for the levelings and going through the campaign is actually the routing, which I will leave a link in the description below. If you are new, Exile leveling is a great tool that allows you to see the exact optimal route that you should and can take during the campaign. Using this tool properly for routing, and you will save a lot of time wondering where should you go next. Alright, so the swap to Power Siphon should happen around the end of Act 3 or starting of Act 4. Once you hit level 31 to 32, you can start finishing your first lap, and then you can swap to Power Siphon Ballista Totem after getting the first Ascendancy point, which is going to give you power charges. Right after that, you want to go to the library in Act 3, and this will let you shop most of the skill gems that you will need in the setups. And you need to complete a quest, but if you are following the Exile leveling routing, it should make sure that you clear this quest at around the end of Act 3. Then you want to make sure that you have a proper wand that you can use for the Power Siphon Totems, which is going to be a spiral wand, and I have a recipe for getting you a really quick and cheap way to get some power early on. So it's going to be a spiral wand and chain bell, and you sell that to the shops with a whetstone, and then you will get a spiral wand with some spell damage. And you can see in the background here, I have no ascendancies. I'm doing it on a ranger, so nothing's really giving me any kind of damage. I'm using a spiral wand, and you can see the damage that I'm doing to the Act 3 boss. So with the proper ascendancies, this is going to be extremely strong right out of the gate. So once you swap to the totem, the gameplay is going to be super chill. You're going to drop your totems, run around, and you're going to watch things just dying around you. We are taking point blank, so you want to make sure that when you're fighting any kind of boss, the totem needs to be right next to the boss to get the most damage out of it. Even without the ascendancies, Power Siphon Totem completely destroy Act 3, and when you get your ascendancies in the campaign itself, it's gonna look much better. Continue to upgrade your gears, follow a plan, and this build will easily carry you through the campaign. If you are new to POE 1, don't stress, the written guide, POB, all tools will help you stay on tracks. For the lab run, make sure you check out the POELab.com. It will show you the fastest route that you can take to complete the lab. The squiggly line on the map will tell you exactly where the doors are, so you can take the shortest path, whether to the top left, to the top right, or the middle of the map. Alright, so here is the POB for the Lig starter setups, and again I have the loadouts for the pre-totem swaps over here. Make sure that whenever you look at the loadout, you choose the loadout up here, but not to change them individually down here, so you'll mess up all the items and skills. Anyway, so I have loadout for pre-totem swaps, I have loadout for the totem swaps until level 60, and I have loadout for the early mapping. And again, this is very budget. This is not using any of the expensive item, not even the Cloak of Defiance, none of the unique jewels, all the trees you can see here, no expensive items. And let's talk about our defense first, because I know some of you are wondering, is this build tanky? The short answer is actually no, not really. This is not one of those super tanky build, and in fact, most mana stacker will probably look tankier on paper, especially with the Arcane Cloak and Sigil Power turned on. And if you are playing with POB, definitely you want to turn it on, but it doesn't mean that, realistically speaking, it's not up all the time. So for example, if I were to turn off Arcane Cloak and I were to turn off Sigil Power over here, the tankness just goes straight down, and it is what it is. And yeah, so tankier on paper. So yes, we'll be squishies, but honestly, that is fine. This is a totem build, so the way that we are playing means we don't actually have to face tank anything. And even though we are not stacking defensive layer, we do have some solid tool to survive, and this is Totem Mastery's Totem Taunt enemy around you for 1 second when they are summoned. Every time we summon a totem, which is going to do all the time when we are mapping, enemies will attack it for 1 second. This is huge for our survivability, and it means that we will rarely get hit as long as we keep running around summoning totems. We have a lot of damage in the build, and again, realistically speaking, if Arcane Cloak is down, Sigil Power is down, you would have around 1.8 to 2 million DPS, which is plenty enough to clear any early game content in the games. Totems will have really high uptimes on enemies while we're running around, which will naturally keep us safe while killing everything. So you will never really get hit. Again, totem playstyle very safe. We are also element immune by running the purity of elements. We don't have to worry about any form of shocks, freeze, and all kind of ailments. The thing is, purity of elements also giving us a tons of elemental resistance, which means it will be cheaper to gear for our build as well. And to deal with stuns, we will get Soul of the Binding as our major pantheon, so we don't worry about being stunned, and we can get the Soul of Earthcool as the minor pantheon, and it's pretty strong as well. Looks, so we are not tanky, and I don't think survivability will actually be a major issue either, as long as we play the maps very well, we position well, we keep upgrading the gears, and everything should be fine. If something turns out to be a problem, I will make the adjustment and I will let everyone know. Talk about issues, we do have a real issues though, and it's some things that I kinda overlook at first. It is the mana sustain. And because we have Arcane Cloak in our build and we want to have it on automations, this means that in our budget setups we have 5,000 mana, and anytime Arcane Cloak is used, it's going to spend 64% of our current mana, which means that it's going to spend around 3,000 mana, and our mana regens, because we are not on a higher event, it's going to be a lot lower, and with 200 we cannot keep up the mana cost from Arcane Cloak. So to be honest, it's not really an easy fix, especially on a budget setup, because we are very limited by our items. I'm using a mana regeneration, the Blue Pearl Amulet, but I don't really have mana regens on any other gears. Stacking mana regens on gears is going to help, but it's not always easy to get. Instead, my plan is actually to fully invest in a mana flask setups, and I made a few adjustments to the previous video that I showed you. So for the Ranger, I didn't talk about this before, but Breathe Deep, one of our Ascendancy passives, is actually insane for this kind of situations. It let us use our mana flask for both mana and life, which means we don't have to take the Agnostic, which is the thing that kind of sustain our life from the Mind Over Matter build that we used last time. And if we are using a good mana flask, pressing the mana flask will instantly restore a ton of mana for us, which in this case, you can see here, I will recover 7,000 mana, which is more than our mana pool. And if we are talking 3,000, this flask alone should be able to sustain Arcane Cloak. By taking the Breathe Deep Ascendancies, we'll get 50% increased mana recovery from Flask, and like I mentioned before, non-instant mana from Flask is recover as life. Mana Flask will recover 7,000 life as well. Anyway, we only have 2,300 life, so that's an instant top up. And we are also taking the arcane chemistries here to help even more with the mana recovery from Flask. We could take the small note as well, it is quite strong. And depending on the situations and how it plays, I will probably consider it. Now, for the actual mana flask itself, there's a few options. And the options that I'm thinking about is going with a caustic eternal mana flask because we can do this trials without any downside. It's remove the life when used and then it's going to instantly recover that much life anyway. And we will recover 7,000 mana. There's another options here, which is the foreboding eternal mana flask. And this is good because you can actually queue up the fast right before Arcane Cloak trigger, and then whenever it triggers, if you queue up like 2 or 3 times, you will instantly recover your mana to full. Because once again, 7,000 mana means we only use 3,000 mana. That's like twice over, right? So it shouldn't be a problem. And personally, I think I'm going with the caustic eternal mana flask in the beginning to see if I'm able to sustain the mana. And I'm going to enchant this flask with the use on guard. So we have an option here is that basically you can use this whenever you use the guard skills on, where is it? Yeah, use the guard skill, right? So if you use it like this, anytime your automation trigger the Arcane Cloak, this flask is going to automatically use and recover your mana. If that is not enough, we have a few other options as well. Like you can see Mana Mastery here. We recover 10% mana over 1 second whenever we use the guard skills. We can actually spec into chance to recover 10% of mana when you use the skills, and we summon our totem a lot, which means that we will also recover a lot of mana here. So yeah, mana sustain is going to be one of our biggest challenge. But I think in this setup, it should more than enough to keep us going. Well, if not, I will probably come up with something. But for now, this is my take on the mana situations and to cover for the loss of the Hierophant Ascendancies. And yeah, so let me know what you think, guys. And finally, I want to quickly touch on how to use this POB for your early game and campaign progression. So first you would start off with the loadout pre-totem swap, and I suggest you, if you're new to POB, they add this a few leaks ago or just recently actually. The loadout setup is very cool. Basically it will change all the items skills to the proper setups with all the configuration as well. So I suggest that you always use these options if you want to take a look at the other setups. So for example, pre-totem swaps, this is for level 1 to 30, and the this is all the point that I suggest you take, and you can go into the notes sections where I have a detailed explanations on the priority pathing for the skill tree. So for example, you would first pass to the aspect of the links, which is over here. So your point would look something like this, and then you would path to quick step, which is here, and so on, right? So this is the note sections. I make sure that it's well detailed, but not too much detail, so you can use this as reference. I have the regex for this shop, like I mentioned before. Eventually, you'll need to find a 4-link by yourself, and we want 2 blue, 1 red, 1 green for Power Siphon. This is the most important thing you have to do when you make the swaps. Once you are at level 31 and you want to make the swaps, for example, you can compare the trees with the totem swap over here. You can see that the respec is not that bad. There's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We actually want this point and we'll spec out of it later, but only 5 points for respecs, and you can put all your points here. I put in the notes section, so swapping requires 5 points to respect. You just remove eager in the links, and then you keep quick steps, acuity, get surveillance, watchtower, totem mastery, and so on, right? So if you have any questions with this, please let me know. And you would go to the totem swaps and you would follow the trees, and that will be it. There was some item suggestions. Once again, we have some really strong options. The spiral one, like I mentioned before, this is just a basic and simple one that I simulate for about 100,000 damage at level 60, which just pretty much reg gears. And then all the skill gems are here. As a matter of fact, in the early sessions, I also have the notes for where do you get this kind of gems, and eventually after you unlock the library, you don't need this anymore because you can buy every gems at the library. And for the gem swap setups, you would run the anger in the beginnings, and then you would remove it after the second lap. For the items, there are a lot of options for unique in case that you drops Chaos Orb and you want to buy something for your upgrades. And they're all listed here. So this is going to be your campaign setups, and once you get to the level 60 and early mapping setups, basically the same thing you want to spec into this point. And I kind of have all this basic setup over here. So for example, Piscator is going to be cheap, Malachi Loops is going to be cheap, Mile of the Council. So this is going to be expensive in my opinion because too many people are playing mana. So if it's too expensive and you can't afford it in the beginning, you can replace it with a Fractal Thoughts. The damage would go down a little bit, but it is another strong contender, and this Fractal Thoughts should be quite cheap. Once again, nothing too special with all these body armor, boots, amulets, and the ring. You want to craft the minimum power charge. I'm not sure how the Betrayer is gonna go. We don't really have an Atlas, so this might be harder to get, and depends on the situations. Breath Stealer might also be harder to get because there's also no Atlas, so I'm not sure how people will be farming Blight, and this item dropped from Blight, so there's that, and we'll see. But none of the gears is actually crazy, nothing too crazy. And the belt, I kind of add the flash mana recovery rate. As I talked about before the mana problem, we want to invest in a really good mana flask, and these flasks can actually roll with higher quality, so you can drop this flask with a monster modifier, a reward. You can get it up to 30 quality, and you can corrupt it to be 40 quality. I think that's the maximum. So that's a lot more mana in case you want to go for something, but otherwise it's not too important. Like I mentioned before, we have some really strong options for jewels, right? And again, I don't use any fancy jewels here. We don't have cluster jewels and things like that. I'm looking to add them in the more expensive setups, but this current setup looks pretty okay, and damage is fine. I have some configurations again for the perfect conditions, but like I kind of show you before, if I would take off Arcane Cloak and Sigil Power, we are still going to be able to reach almost 2 million DPS, which is amazing. And I think this is why the Ascendancy is so strong on such a low budget. And this setup alone will get you to level 80 as fast as you can. We do a lot of damage. Later on, with more dexterity, you can also remove some of these spell suppressions. Chance note that you don't need them anymore, and you should be able to reach these suppression cap. But for now, we only have 600 dexterity, which is very medium, and you can reach over 1000 with some split personality jewels over here. If we do path up here, eventually we want to path up here. These cluster right here give a lot of damage. Alright, so that's pretty much covered everything. Now, I haven't really talked about currency farming yet, and that's mainly because I'm not sure how many people will be playing the league. Plus, without an LS3, we can only speculate on what's the best farming strat. With that being said, my plan going into the event is quite simple. I'm going to rush through the campaign as fast as possible. We are going to upgrade King's March early on, as I mentioned before, starting from Act 6 or 7. I think GGG has a plan to make this process smoother, so be on the lookout for that. You should also consider to do some heist farming around level 65 to 67. It's a pretty solid way to stack up some Chaos Orb in the early game for some early upgrades. There are plenty of guys out there on this strategy already, but if you have any questions, drop by my Discord, Lazy Hideout, and ask away. With that, I hope you guys will have a great time in the event. Good luck out there, and I will see you in the next update on day 1 of the league. Thank you so much for watching, and Lazy out.